Welcome back to The Winning Mindset, the CEO Guidebook. So what are the attributes of the best CEOs? Well, they are exceptional futurists. They keep an eye on the downside. They act like an owner, applying hard paddles to create a series of performing-enhancing S-curves. You have to reinvent yourself because the world is changing, and so you have to change as well.
Not everyone sees all the things that you see, all of those pieces together. And there's actual work in being that integrator who sees all those pieces, who recognizes the interdependencies across your strategy, your board, your investor expectations, your organization, and is also looking forward to the future. And that's a big part of the CEO's job, is not just keeping the business running, but thinking about where it's going to go next and thinking about these series of S-curves for the company of where it's going into the future. I think Hubert Joly was a great example of that at Best Buy, right? He walked into almost a turnaround situation, but he saw the multiple steps that were going to get them to a position of strength. So the first phase was all around turnaround and cost cutting and earning the right to go further. Then the next phase started to reframe and rebuild the relationships with the vendors and position them for growth. And then he went ahead and really redesigned what it looks like to be an electronics retailer at the intersection of physical and online and delivering a customer experience. He was the one looking ahead of where we needed to go, while also focusing his company on delivering what they needed to do now. So it is a juggling act, right? These 6 aspects of the role that we talk about. And your job is to keep all of those pieces happening. I think our co-author, Scott Keller, talks about it as being a decathlete, right? You need to be in the top 20 in the world in all 6 sports at the same time. And that's part of the challenge of the role.
In fact, one of the other distinct mindsets that high-performing CEOs share is their ability to think like an outsider when it comes to resource allocation. 83% of CEOs believe that capital allocation is a key lever for growth. McKinsey's research shows that high-performing companies reallocate more than 6% of their capital from year to year, versus a large majority that reallocates just 1%. The difference, the data suggests, means a CEO isn't constrained by legacy or tradition and is willing to take a long-term view rather than be boxed in by short-term pressures. So, to codify the key takeaways, start with a zero base. Solve for the whole rather than parts. Manage by milestones, not annual budgets, and kill as much as you create.
There were 2 or 3 things that struck me, though, as we talked to these excellent CEOs. The first was their North Star in terms of their overall vision for the company and where they wanted to take it from a strategic point of view at a very macro level, never really shifts over their tenure, right? You may need to adjust it year to year. The environment shifts, the challenges shift. You may have to adjust your tactics, your strategic tactics in terms of acquisitions or product segment strategies or customer segment strategies, but they don't waver from their perspective in terms of the overall vision of where the organization needs to go. So that's number one. And number 2, they really recognize that to shift legacy organizations and to move it in a direction which allows them to really go focus on an audacious vision typically requires very significant culture change. And so they focus a lot on this mindset that we talk about when it comes to aligning the organization, which is treat the soft stuff as the hard stuff. They recognize that these things that we call the soft stuff, culture, talent, organizational alignment, is actually really, really hard work. They all buy into this old saying by Peter Drucker that culture eats strategy for breakfast every day. So they put a lot of time and energy into that.
In a connected and volatile world, as organizations grow and scale, they need to come to terms with building in flexibility while also ensuring stability. McKinsey's research shows that organizations that work on creating an environment that enable agility but without sacrificing on stability are 3 times more likely to be high-performing than those that are agile but lack stability, and 4 times more likely to be high-performing than those that are stable but lack agility, and hence the importance of stagility.
The CEO of today has to deal with a lot of change and a lot of uncertainty, particularly around speed, number one, newer and current challenges like inflation and geopolitics, number two, and three, some new challenges that will be relevant for many years to come, like sustainability going forward. And in my mind, the timeless messages of the mindsets will remain, but they will need to adjust on the tactics. They will need to adjust on the tactics of strategy, right? How are you really being bold? How are you modifying your strategies in the context of a year or two, but not necessarily in the context of a 5 or 10-year horizon?
As a CEO, I tell you, I'm finding that I have to become a learning CEO. I have to go to school all the time because I'm learning new skills that I need to run this company, and I'm realizing that I'm not equipped to just coast. I have to constantly renew my skills. But more importantly, I have to surround myself with people who can help the company power through these VUCA times. What are we looking for? We're looking for leaders who are extremely agile, who can go from geopolitical calm to geopolitical crisis, from commodity volatility, where commodity prices collapse one day to another time when commodity prices are at an all-time high. In the volatile world that we have, priorities do change. It's interesting. At the top, priorities change more often. As you go down the organization, you have to anchor some priorities, because if everything changes for large portions of people, they cannot handle the volatility. The top 3 levels of the company are critical. Those levels, you've got to teach them to insulate the rest of the organization from wild swings, but work with the CEO on the volatility. In volatile times, it's more important you're out there, you're visible, you show that you're in charge, and that you're confident.
Well, that is the former CEO of Pepsi, Indra Nooyi, and as we just heard from her, the best CEOs stop the pendulum from swinging wildly. They also emphasize accountability, and that is crucial. They also think helix and not matrix. And of course, they make smart choices.
I think as CEO of today embodies the mindsets that we've been talking about, right? The boldness of ambition that is expected of them, but also that they're capable of in their organizations. I think there's a recognition that this job is too big for one individual leader. So you have to mobilize your team. You have to manage the psychology of your leadership team so that you're all driving towards the same goal. You can't put your head in the sand as in terms of your stakeholders. So the amount of engagement with your board, with the other stakeholders is a core part of the role. And so CEOs today are CEOs of the world, right? And they're learning constantly from what's going on around them. They're bringing that into their organizations. They're mobilizing people towards really extraordinary goals. And it's an exciting opportunity. It's difficult, but those who are doing it well can accomplish terrific things for all the stakeholders that they're managing.
Best CEOs focus on functions and role first and then find the right people to fill them. Now, talent management should be driven by identifying the most important jobs, defining the skills, attributes and experience needed, and then starting the search process. Here's how the best CEOs make the right people decisions. They define what are the high-value roles. They don't forget the left tackles, and they find the unusual suspects and ensure that you actively build a bench.
It's really important to recognize that great CEOs care deeply about talent. They recognize that without talent, they are not going to get very far. We asked an open-ended question to many of our CEOs, which was simply, what is your single biggest regret? And remember, this question is being asked of incredibly successful CEOs. And 9 out of 10 of them gave some version of, I didn't move fast enough on talent. I didn't move fast enough on talent. Each story was a little different, but by and large, the big message was move quickly on talent. When you recognize talent gaps, when you recognize things aren't working on your team or in other parts of the organization, move quickly on talent. We anchor too often on building a team of stars. We want a whole series of A players, a lot of them who are great at what they do. But one of the things we heard loud and clear from these great CEOs was it's not about a team of stars, it's about a star team. How do you get away from the mentality of a team of stars and really build a star team where the team is working collaboratively and really well together. James Gorman, the CEO of Morgan Stanley, said to us, focus in on the 2 C's when you pick a team. The first C is for capabilities, and the second C is for collaborativeness. And you want to have both in your team and in your leaders that are working for you.
So what we've attempted to do are decode some of the ground rules for the CEO Guidebook. In our next episode, we turn the spotlight on our first high-performing CEO and continue this pursuit for CEO excellence. From all of us here on the CNBC TV18 team, thanks very much for watching, and don't forget to tune in.